Well, I'm saying yes.
CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 5, Yes to Life. And now, your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson, and co-host, Frederick Cotto Lewis, with very special guest and Motown legend, Mr. Eddie Watkins Jr.
So welcome back, everyone. This is show 5, and we're excited because it's our first show where we have a guest, and that guest is Mr. Eddie Watkins Jr. today.
Hey now.
Hey.
How's everybody?
Yeah, I'm Cynthia Alice, and I'm here with my co-host,
Frederick Cotto Lewis.
and of course, our awesome producer.
Dave Groff, what is up, everybody?
Yeah, so it's going to be a great day. This is show 5, Yes to Life. And we are excited about it because with every show, we are simply talking about our spiritual experiences. These are conversations among friends. And so it's fun to invite Eddie Watkins Jr. into this conversation because he has a powerful journey, a powerful history. And we want to get you to, you to get to know him a little bit before the show starts. So Eddie, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, your career. I know that you were a huge bass player, really the 70s through the 90s. I mean, pretty much any, R&B stuff. I mean, you were there. And I think when you were 17, didn't you have a great gig too? I mean, I remember you coming onto the scene as such a young bass player. Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, it's interesting because I just saw a photo on Facebook of the guy that actually discovered me. His name is Norman Whitfield.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a producer back in Motown and did a lot of the Temptations and stuff like that. But at 17 years old, he hired me to play bass on a record for the Temptations.
Yes.
Yeah. Incredible.
So that's where it started for me. And then when Motown left Detroit and went to California, I followed because that was like my only source of income at the time was, playing recording sessions. Yep. But when I came out to California, there were like so many more companies. It was Motown, it was Warner Brothers, there was CBS, on and on. So I started working for a lot of other companies, and that's how my career took off.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, what an impressive career. I don't know if there's a Motown hit we could hear and not hear you somewhere on it. That's what I've learned over the time I've gotten to know you. I also know you have a real powerful story of recovery, and so we want to hear more about that on the show. The title of the show, Yes to Life, we really thought of you because we know one of your songs that you currently have is called Yes to Life, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So today, Yes to Life is really about these 3 things. One is, what are we creating?
What are you creating?
Right. We all want to be looking at what are we creating? And then, what are some of the conscious choices we're making every day? We want to know and discuss what are some of our yes to life activities, not realizing that unconsciously, in fact, many of us are making no to life choices every day.
Yes. Truly.
Can I have an amen?
Okay. Because prior to this show, on show number 4, it was talking about I'm spiritually awake. I'm awake. Okay, now what? And so we was talking about talking about setting our intentions. So now in setting our intentions, we definitely want to know that we are creating co-creators. I love that.
Yeah.
I always tell people that we're powerful co-creators with spirit in our lives. And just like you said, we have to be conscious and aware that even some of the things subconsciously we are creating we don't even want.
Yes. Yes.
So.
And then lastly today, we're going to be talking about even more intuition in your soul. And in virtually every show that you'll hear us do, we are always going to come back to the nature of the soul and why we're here. And we know we're all souls on this journey together. So whatever faith group you may find yourself in fact, we know you not only have a soul, but you are a soul. And we're here in celebration of that and learning how we can live more conscious lives by living from the soul.
I like the part where it's talking about in point number 2, conscious choices, and then it says, what are your yes to life activities?
Yes, yes.
You know, and that goes along also with setting your intention. Once you set your intention for that day, you want to say, well, okay, now what kind of activities am I going to allow myself to
Yes.
be involved in?
Yes. Yeah.
Ooh, what am I going to allow myself to be involved in? Because, you know, life will try to drag us into certain things, right?
Right, and certain energies, for
Yeah.
sure. So, Eddie, thanks for joining us. I know right now your work is taking you now really all over the country doing music, but not necessarily in clubs. Tell us a little bit about what you're currently creating now as a part of your soul journey in the world, and maybe
like
even
that.
a little bit about how you got here. Tell us, elucidate us.
Well, I had made a decision in 2018 that I was going to stop traveling
Oh,
and look for a job.
how'd that go?
It went great. I've been employed now for the last 3 months at the Unity Church of Creative Living in St. John's, Florida,
Yeah.
All right.
and it's wonderful being a part of a community again, because I had
Yeah.
traveled for 5 years nonstop, you know, and it's a funny thing when we're talking about saying yes to life, and what are we going to create today? Because it came to mind today when I was like taking a shower, getting ready to sit down here in front of you guys, and I became so grateful for the fact that I had like hot water,
Right.
Wow. Just talking about water.
you know, and when I traveled, sometimes I would take showers in bus stops.
Yes.
Yeah, I
And I
bet.
was home. I didn't have a house. For 5 years, I had no permanent address.
Wow.
Well, that's
And-
intense. Yeah.
And I learned so much from that time, because there were certain things that I wanted, but all during the time when I was traveling, I was always grateful for what I had in the moment.
Yes. What a learning.
And I think that's a good place to be when you're even considering co-creating anything, is remaining in the now.
Yes.
Being grateful for right now. What do I have? You know, not thinking, oh, well, what I had in the past, or oh, whoa, what if this happens, or you know what I'm saying? You go. What I've always heard, you know, I'm in recovery. I'm in recovery also, and have been for the past 7 years. And they said if you're too far in the past and you're too far ahead in the future, then you are actually you're standing, you're in between your now. You know what I'm saying? You're actually pissing on your now, just to say it, just like they said it.
That's the word. Yeah.
And
That's the
now
word.
I have to be authentic, because this is the name of the story. It's the authentic
Yeah.
spiritual journey. So they say if I got 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the present, I'm pissing on my now.
Right.
So I'm not even paying attention to what's going on right now. And I know that being grateful for what I have right now, because right now is so good. Isn't that right, Eddie?
Well, you know, I just would say, look what God has done
yes.
so far.
Yes.
And then when you take a look at that, man, that just kind of gives you all you need to move forward. Because I mean, geez, look how far we've all come.
Yes.
Amen.
And me at 23 years, you know.
23 years.
23 in recovery
23 years between cocktails, you know.
Hey, okay.
and counting, right? And counting.
Hey.
Yeah,
So-
you know. So when anything that's in front of me, I have to look at my gratitude for what's happening in the moment, you know.
Yes.
And it's very hard to be in that vibration and be in a regret or an anxiety mode,
True.
Yes.
past and future, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I just completed a series, Eddie, on prosperity, where one of the key teachings in the material in my Prosperity for You book is gratitude is the great multiplier.
Yes.
You know, so all the things, even in areas of life where we are feeling need, that if we just acknowledge the little we have, then we are making room, to receive more. So, and that's really what we're about today is what are we creating? I mean, you created for yourself, not being on the road, which is awesome.
Yes.
With all your gigging for years and then moving into, so much music in the churches and traveling for 5 years, you creating a stay-at-home job. That's a powerful creation.
That was.
That's a powerful
And it is.
yes to life decision for yourself. That's for sure.
So what actually brought you to that stay-at-home job and that decision, Eddie?
Mostly a woman.
Oh,
Okay. Hey.
speak the word.
Well, you want to spend time with the person you love.
That's it.
That makes sense.
No, really. It was a combination. it was a combination of things. It was time, but then
Sure.
But then meeting my sweet Mary Ann, and I saw something that was better, something that was stable.
Yeah.
And because being on the road for so long was exhausting.
It is.
Exactly.
In so many ways, not only the traveling, but financially things being inconsistent a lot, and I'm doing this job at the church, but I also have a job at the Ocala Hilton,
Nice.
playing there on Friday nights. So I get to play like some secular type music and
Cool.
that sort of thing. So, I mean,
You're doing.
I have 2 jobs now. I'm looking for a third.
Oh, good Lord.
Was it a real the process of stepping down from that? Was it because that's been in your DNA for so long?
Yeah.
Talk us through kind of the process of coming to grips with that. Was there a grieving period for that, or were you just so done with the road you were just like, just get me away from this?
Yeah, so done with it. It was like
In a word.
Just think about it. 5 years. I mean,
Yeah.
in 5 years, you get to look in the mirror and see the changes in your face in 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then, like I said, it got to be exhausting, and I learned a lot about myself. And, when I took off with that When You Believe CD, people had told me that was a healing CD. I listened to it and I'm healed. I mean, so I would say, let me go out into America and heal you and make it better,
Yes, yes.
And when I got out there, I found out that I needed all kinds of healing.
Imagine, right?
That's normally what happens when when you set the intention to give something. Know that Spirit is also giving you what you're thinking about giving to someone else, because it's always a giving and receiving, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that the way Spirit was like revealing this to me is that if you want to go out and sing this to people, you better be living it.
You got
And
it.
I'm going to give you the I'm going to give you the homework.
You need to be. Yeah.
I'm going to set you up. Yeah. You know what you're talking about.
It's like we need to be in the right place. You know what I mean?
Well, but this is how our personality supports our journey, right? Because I think you have to have a certain amount of ego to be able to be in front of a large group. You have to be sure enough of yourself that you have a gift to give, and that's a self-worth that not everyone has.
Yes.
So when we, in our limited understanding, say, I'm going to go heal the world. Spirit says, right, you are. Go ahead. Then we find, like you say, what we meet is a mirror of ourselves, and that and then that we need to heal. So I think that's really, really powerful how Spirit uses that in all of us. We're doing a podcast for our spiritual conversations, and yet I'm the one most blessed by it, in fact. So
definitely,
we're
so
right in
am I.
there with you. We're right in there with you.
But on the other hand, it's also a little bit like the cobbler's kids go without shoes.
Yeah.
You're in the trenches, and the first person you start neglecting is yourself.
Yeah. It's easy to
That's
do.
very true. Very true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Eddie. Sorry.
No, I agree with that. in my case, coming off of the road, you get used to a certain a certain
lifestyle
mechanism that you attach your supply to.
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
So you believe that your well-being is basically attached to some sort of activity, and that you're doing it all.
Yes.
So what happened is when I came off the road, I allowed myself to be available. I said yes to life,
Yes.
and I allowed myself to be available to the thing that I was hoping for, that I was hoping to attract, right?
Yes.
And that's exactly what happened. But at the bottom of it was a knowing that this is what works.
Yes.
When you know that this works, and it's worked your entire life,
Yeah.
then you have no fear about it. You just have distractions and noise.
Oh,
Yes.
that's important right there.
Yeah, and that's what it is. So once you can get rid of the distractions and get into your center, and then you can rest on the things that you already know.
Yes.
It's happened your entire life. Why should it change now?
Exactly.
So I love what you said, and what I heard is that it's about changing the habits. Because what I'm learning is that if you continue to do the same thing, then you're going to continue to get the same results.
Right.
So, and even when you're making that choice, and now the choice is coming because you made the choice, and so now the choice is there, and now it's like changing the habit, and that's the part that's the hardest because we're creatures of habit. Like you said, there's a certain lifestyle, there's a certain this, you got a certain, and now when you're staying at home, finding another job, you got a new relationship, all this stuff is like new. Wow. This is like really some real life activities that we need to be present for.
Yes.
And like I love what Eddie said is it's about paying attention to the distractions. It's like the noises and the lights. You know what they say, squirrel, and you have to and so you have to stay focused, even on that. And that's what I get what you're saying about that.
Yeah, and I think it's important for all of us and our listeners too to realize that we don't have some imaginary support that you don't have. We all have the same basis of support. I think
all of us.
Those of us really on the adventure called life,
the authentic spiritual journey
is that we are willing to step out and trust, realizing that there is in fact support from the very universe to live our soul's passion. So when you decided, Eddie, there's a new yes to life choice. When I made the choice to go on the road, for that point, that was my yes to life choice. Now there's a new choice I'm making for a different quality of life, and the universe says, great. So as you open to receive, the universe rushed in the support on that. And yes, but there was also work for you to do, obviously, right?
Of course.
So we're all in that. We're all in that. So I just want to encourage all of us, myself included, and all our listeners, that we want to be conscious about what we're creating, and then make room to receive. Over the years, I've counseled so many people, and people will say, well, I want a relationship. And then I will say, well, tell me about your life. And they are in a class every night and working all this time. Every night is booked. And I say, well, when are you making time for a relationship? And they go, oh, they haven't made any room to receive the new that they say they want. And so you said something really important about, just making room to, receive this new life wave that you called forth for yourself. So that's a powerful co-creation.
I like that. And for me, a word that keeps coming up, and Reverend and Alice and I, we've discussed it, talked about it a little bit on Wednesday, going over our notes, was recreating myself.
Yes.
Recreating myself, because life can get so monotonous. It seemed like, like you said, being out on the road, you had to take baths, and that was a monotony. It became like, okay, this is the norm. So now here it is, I got to recreate myself. and you'd be like, well, what have I not done? Or what can I do new that would make me feel a little more vibrant, a little more awakened consciously.
A little more on purpose.
Yeah, a little more on purpose, and will help me to work through my relationships, my job, my finances, just me. Because, I got my own personal issues going on besides a relationship or a marriage.
Right. And I think, you're pointing to something important. And Andy, I think by what you said, you had to first have a vision of what was possible for you before you could even move towards, this new plan in your life.
Exactly.
You didn't go into that willy-nilly. It was like, okay, I really want a different quality of life. You had an idea and a vision, right, of where you were headed. And then the conscious choices followed that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And it's really interesting because as a young man, I thought it was cool what you said about how, a lot of times we're saying no to life.
Yes.
Yes.
Instead of yes to life. And sometimes when we don't get the demonstration that we want to get or the demonstration we see other people getting, it's because we'll say yes to life, and the universe will say yes, and then we'll say, well, maybe and no, and the universe will say, well, maybe and no.
Yeah, right. Just exactly as you say. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But when I went out to California as a young man, and I thought that I could be successful as a session bass player, I didn't know any better.
That's it. Right.
Because I knew that that this was my logic. My logic was that. Well, they made so many basses, and there's so many records and so many companies. So why? It has to be room for more.
Right.
That's it. There got to be.
Right.
So I went out and it wasn't like, well, why me? It was like, well, why not me?
Why not me?
Exactly.
But see, now let me give you the key to all of this, because a lot of people are trying to find their purpose in life.
Yes.
Trying to find the encouragement and everything. I was fortunate because I had a big mama. I had a grandmother who thought that the world revolved around me.
Oh, beautiful.
Lord.
And what she instilled in me was something where I never had to look for anybody's approval for anything.
Incredible.
Because between her and my parents, Big Mama spoiled me, but grandparents, pick one and spoil them.
Yeah, let them know they did hang the moon, right?
But that's so funny that you would say that, because it's the same thing that happened with me, except my parents, they were there when they needed to, but my grandmother was the main player of that, and she saw, and Alice said that today, even on our way driving over here. She said that they saw in you something that way before you even knew who you were. They saw that. And so they worked to bring that out.
Yes.
And that's important too, that you have someone to do that. It helps you to believe in yourself. But that didn't stop, it didn't stop me personally from having my own journey. And I no matter what my journey is, I do not regret anything in my past that I had to go through to get here to where I am now. I know that here it is. I'm always saying that all things are working for my good.
Yes. Yes.
No matter what it seemed like, how it felt or whatever. And I'm always trusting that. And I think that's what have really kept me moving forward and saying yes to life, making yes to life choices.
We'll return to your program in just a few moments, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. Christ Church Unity is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. CCU Orlando is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online, as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We'd also like to extend our thanks to our podcast partner, Aikens Counseling Center. Cassandra Akins is a licensed mental health counselor dedicated to creating sacred space where clients can explore their own inner process in a safe, non-judgmental, and supportive environment. She works with individuals, couples, and groups who are seeking to live a more authentic life. Akins Counseling Center is located in Winter Park, Florida, and can be found on the web at CassandraAkins.com. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey.
I want to mention my grandma too, because my grandma was huge in my journey as well. She believed in me. She saw a need for connection, and she filled that. And being the youngest of so many kids, she had a special relationship with everybody. But when I was a kid, I thought I was the only one, and I have that with me, still today. I know you both do too. It's like it's something you come back to within yourself. And you're right. We need to, if we're parents, grandparents, aunts, or uncles to little ones, we don't know how important we are to their journey. And part of my teaching and my lesson to myself is I want somebody to one day say that I was a good ancestor to them.
Yes.
That it's not enough that somebody was good to me. I've got to pass it on.
You have to.
I have to pass it on. So, one of the things, I was thinking of, when we first talked about the show and bringing you on, about your yes to life, is that life is full of choices. And as spiritual souls, we're looking to make what we call conscious choices. In other words, that a lot of choices that we make in life, of course, for all of us, myself included, are unconscious, and so we don't realize that the choices we're making are, in fact, establishing not only our now and our next few days, but our future as well. It goes back to what Fred was saying earlier. If we're stuck in the past or in the future, and not in our now, we're really not creating anything important, because we can't when we're in the past or in the future. So we want to be as conscious as possible in our choices today for, what we're trying to create. And that many of us, if not all of us, on a daily basis, make no to life choices rather than yes to life choices.
What I hear, I know what I hear in that. I'm loving that, because what I'm hearing in that is that we are not only making those choices for ourselves, but those are our collective choices also.
Yes.
It's not like you said, our grandparents, that's a big part of it. Our grandparents was an influence for us, and now we have to be an influence for those coming behind us. And then while you're living here, trying to be an influence to others in the world.
Yes. Yes.
And you don't, and most of us, I know for me, most of us don't even think that we're making that kind of impact. Someone says, "Oh, Fred, you're such a big impact in the world." And then I turn around and say, "But you are too."
Yes.
Don't
put it all on me.
Yeah, don't sit me on a pedestal, because I'm glass, I break.
That's right. You're going to
easy.
fall off eventually.
Right,
Yeah.
I break. I'm fragile. Okay. But I wanted to try to instill that in other people. And I think that's a very important part. And I know that the life choice, Eddie, that you made to even be at home and have a job there, that's an important road to that community where you are now.
Yeah, it is. And, a lot of that stuff was instilled in me, like when you see what works in life over the course of your life. Big Mama, her intention
Big Mama.
was for me to play piano in the church.
Wow.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, but see, I didn't have time for that when she was alive, because once I learned how to read music and I picked up a bass, it was rock and roll, baby.
Yeah.
So I didn't have much use for the church, because the church didn't pay enough.
Exactly.
Okay.
So my dad was like, "Boy, you better go and do something for the church." And then Big Mama, she just she point up at me and say, "What you doing for the Lord? What you doing for the Lord?" I said, "I'll make a donation."
Well, you know what they say. They say when you
just to show you the power of intention. Power of intention. Big Mama's gone now, and she never got to see me as a choir director or any of that kind of stuff.
But what they say.
Just to show you the power of intention, at 13 years old, when she at 7 years old, when she bought me a piano, that was her sole intention, that one day I would play piano in the church.
See,
And that's what I've dedicated my life to.
and so what that helps, it causes me to see is that what truly, just like what the word says, is that you train up a child in the way that they should go.
Yeah.
And they may depart from it, but they will come back.
Yes.
You know, it'll come. It's like, though the vision tarry, wait on it. It will come.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
pass.
As someone who grew up on a military base, I grew up in California, far, like 3,000 miles away from family. So so I didn't have what you guys are talking about. I didn't have the grandparent experience. You know, I didn't
Right.
have aunts and uncles around. I did not have an extended network of blood relatives there to support. But what I did have was friends. You know, and
Yes.
like family not by choice. Some of it was family by rank, you know, like fellow officers that my dad knew and everything. But something similar, Eddie, that I had was her name was Alberta Hale, and when I was 9 years old, she I didn't know it at the time, but what she was doing, she was prophesying over me, right?
Yes,
I'm
right.
just like,
Yes.
crazy Alberta. I don't know what's going on. And she said, I see you surrounded by children, and you're going to go into youth ministry. And at the time, I was like, well, okay, whatever. I want to play drums. And that prophecy wasn't fulfilled until I became an educator at a Christian college in Memphis.
There you go.
See?
And then suddenly it all kind of clicked. But
Yeah.
that wasn't like a grandparent or
Yeah.
that was somebody who came around us. And, you know, on military bases, that's very, very common because everybody's removed from
Yes,
extended family.
for sure.
And so the family becomes the support network. So I want to encourage any of our listeners who maybe didn't have the big mama experience, you know, and that sometimes family is your next door neighbor or
It is.
or your parents' friends or whatever.
I
Yeah.
got that too because
Yeah.
I have this woman right now today, and she loves it when I come see her. Her name, that's Miss Betty, and Miss Betty was like a mama away from a mama. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
She would chastise me and everything, and she would just love me, feed me. I come to her house. She said, "Fred, this your house just like mine." You know, and
Right.
so you have to love those kind of neighbors and
Yes.
just friends. And
Yeah.
I was just a
But
friend.
that's very important. Yeah, it's very
Yeah, it
important
does.
because it truly does take a village.
Yes.
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 So I see that allowing ourselves to even be involved with someone that much and really not even thinking that they're an influence in our life, but they really are.
Or being that person to
someone
else.
else.
To someone
Like
else.
my next door
Exactly.
neighbor right now, he's 12 years old, and he sits there on GarageBand, and he just makes music.
Right.
Right.
And I want to be that person for him and
Yes.
encourage him.
That's
Come on
powerful.
over, let's play music together. And so you know,
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, one day he'll be telling us a story about Big Dave.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, I wanted to get to some specifics too in terms of our listeners to really be thinking about their conscious choices,
Yes.
right? What every day. So, and as I'm saying these things, these may even sound obvious, but why I know they're not is because I counsel people and I've worked with people for many years now, and the things that might seem obvious from a listener's perspective, when you're in the middle of life, they're not always obvious. For
Right.
instance, if you say you want to lose weight, but you're constantly, stopping for Ben and Jerry's, that's a no to life. That's a no to life behavior.
No
right?
point intended.
Oh yeah. I ain't talking about you and other, but. Or, if you want, your body to be healthy and all you eat is fried foods that clog up your adrenals, that's a no to life activity. You were
Yes.
saying, I don't really want what I say I want. I want to be comfortable and not have to change. So I just wonder in your lives, what some of those things might be. What are some of those areas where you've wanted something, but the choice has been no to life, and then you had to shift. I think that's important for us to share that we're in this together. We're not sitting here as hosts as like our lives are perfect. As a matter of fact,
No.
we're saying we're working real hard at it, and we get together to support one another so that we can see the sameness in our journeys.
Right. Well, I know I had to make those choices. Definitely in the choice for in my recovery.
Yeah.
That was a
huge.
big choice. Huge, because the life that I was living before that, I knew. Well, everybody knew before I knew. I think I was the last to know.
We often are the last to know.
I know, but they told me that everybody was like, "Fred, you're so smart, and you're so." And the biggest person that would say that is my dad's mother, because my mom's mom was the one that raised me. But my dad's mother came in later on in life, and she said, "That darn Fred, he could do anything, you know." And she said, "But only if he didn't do, if he didn't do drugs."
Yeah.
Or if he didn't have that addiction. And I would be like, I would hear it, but I would be, how you can block out stuff.
Yeah.
Like I did. I wanted to make it like norm, like it was the norm for me.
Like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah, I was right. I was thinking that I was normal.
Yeah, I got this.
Yeah, I got this.
And I didn't have a clue, right? Didn't even have a clue. But one day, I don't know, it's like a light switch came on. And all of a sudden, here it is. I had this yes to life moment.
Yes.
And I had a conversation with Spirit, and I said, Lord, I do not want my life to be like this.
Beautiful.
No more.
Yeah.
Here it is. I heard inside of me, following that intuition and that small voice inside of you that everyone has, it said, if you want a different life, you're going to have to do something you never did before.
That's so true.
This is what I've been talking about, recreating yourself. So I had to find out, what have I never done before? Because I thought I had did everything, right?
Yeah.
You know how you think, oh, I done everything in life, right? But I heard then following right after that, this is to let you know that same intuition that will lead you out of this something will also bring you right into something. Because the Spirit said then, you have never lived without alcohol and drugs.
Oh.
It gave me the answer.
I love it.
The intuition. This is the small voice inside of all of us. I know
Yeah.
everybody hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and about 10 years ago, at 350 pounds plus, I was, I was a musical director and choir director in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
And I couldn't make it up a flight of steps without taking a rest before I got to my office.
Wow.
And looking in the mirror and buying your clothes is like the big and tall place, and being in such denial.
Yes.
That you're eating and you're making all kinds of excuses.
Yes.
As you're eating.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're wondering why, you're not losing the weight. And what happened to me was, I just got so tired. It was just like, I had tried everything that you could do that didn't require work.
Right?
I know, right? We all do that, right? If there's just an easy way to do it, we all want it.
Is there a pill?
Is there a pill? Please, God, give me a pill. Well,
and what happened was a revelation came to me regarding animals. And it had nothing to do with my weight at the time, but I had an awakening regarding the life of animals being sacred and,
yes,
fellow sentient beings. And that was really what started me on that journey, because I could no longer eat animals. So how am I going to live? I mean, my favorite food was bacon.
Okay.
So what am I going to do now? So
okay.
I'm not a fan of broccoli. So I started juicing and then started losing a lot of weight. And then what happened is my mind started to clear up and all sorts of things started happening at that point.
Wow.
But that was quite a journey, because as I started giving away my clothes, I went into like a mourning.
Oh,
That's the grieving process.
Yes.
It was a grieving process. I'm giving away the clothes of a person that I used to be.
Yes.
And that person is gone now.
That person is
not coming back.
Yes.
And that person and these clothes are not going to be useful to him anymore.
No more.
And then it was some sort of a psychological, spiritual thing that I went through.
Yes, it
And
is.
do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Hey, I'll tell you what I'm thinking right now. Every day I walk away. That's your song. Walking away from the past, right? That held me for so long. That's your song.
Yes, that's right. Today is the day I walk. Every day I walk away.
Every day I walk away. That's a really important part of the journey.
That is beautiful.
The grief aspect, and that you honored the grief aspect
Yes.
too. I really want to lift that up, Eddie. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
When I work with sponsees, that's what I always tell them. I say you need to write a letter, and have a this is what you call like a breakup. I'm divorcing you.
I'm divorcing
The
myself.
I'm
dear
divorcing.
John letter.
Yeah, it is, and I think that's so important. And then just throwing it, just burning it, doing whatever, bury it, do whatever you need to do. But you need to have that process. You got to have that grieving process of letting go.
Yes, and one of the key things I've been working with the last few years, and in my son's prayer every night, there's a prayer that we do before bed. When we release things into the light, for him to go to sleep, we always release them with love, forgiveness, and
Yes,
blessing,
right.
not shame, regret, and remorse. That we honor that aspect of the self, and we release it with love, forgiveness, and blessing, knowing even though that's no longer us, that was an important part of the journey. So
was.
we don't want to shame ourselves for anything of the past, but we just want to honor it as an important part. Forgive, forgive, release, let go, move on, kind of. But that's the phrase we use, is that we release it with love, forgiveness, and blessing. And I think that's an important part of the
That
journey.
is definitely important, because you want to make sure that your intention is pure, and the energy that you're releasing it with.
Yes.
Because whatever
Yes.
energy you're releasing it with is the energy you're going to have.
Yes, and taking it into your next phase.
Exactly.
And that really moves us into our last point, which we've actually been talking about the whole day, which
Touched on
is really about listening, using your intuition, which of course is really your soul.
Yes.
That again, we believe you're a threefold being, that you're all three: spirit, soul, and body, three integrated parts of one dynamic whole, and that. Eddie, our last couple shows have been about spiritual awakening, and virtually everything we've been talking about today are moments of awakening, whether it's moving from an old career to moving out of addiction, to changing your life. All these are moments of awakening that have been fueled by, I think, listening to the inner voice of spirit that resides within us, that we call the soul.
Yeah, for me, it's when you talk about that intuition.
Yeah.
It's sort of like when you say, well, I had a feeling.
Yes.
That's right.
I just had a feeling. Well, what is that feeling? Because it's so funny with Carlton Pearson in that movie Come Sunday. He was talking about, the spirits was talking to me. He says, yeah, well, what spirit was it talking to?
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to make sure you know what spirit talking to.
But for me, it's like when it's a feeling that comes along with whatever that intention is, and coupled with your experience.
Yes.
I think your experience is like the greatest teacher of all.
Yes.
Coupled with that intuition, because your intuition is going to be based largely on your experience.
Yes.
Well, yeah. I think you're saying something important, and I've seen this a lot in ministry where, people say, well, Spirit told me, and then they just kind of launch into something kind of willy-nilly without it really being grounded, like you're saying, in experience and in spiritual consciousness, because typically it's an ego want or desire that they're dressing up as spiritual. And I think you're making an important point that we want the guidance, which is, again, what spirit are you listening to be really grounded in experience and in, what's the word? A grounded choice based on experience, yes, and based on the inner voice, yes, but with a lot of contemplation and meditation before just jumping into some new way of doing or being. That this is a real discipline on the journey to listen to the inner voice of spirit anyway.
Exactly.
And everything is going to be based in principle,
Yes.
not opinion.
Right.
Okay. I like that because what it brought to me then is like you're not so worried about what Spirit said. See, because Spirit can say one thing and that'll start you on the journey, but know that during that time or on that path that now you have to continue to
Right.
listen, because if Spirit says, well, now let's go a different route, or let me throw in this.
Right.
You have to be ready to receive that and still receive that with the right intentions or the right principle.
Yeah, I got to jump in here.
Go ahead.
Because so often people will say, well, I did what Spirit said and it didn't work. I thought it was going to work. And I'm like, exactly, because your ego attached to what you thought was an outcome based on the guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And right. And oftentimes
we
hear something just to move us forward.
Exactly.
And we think it means something it doesn't mean because the ego is always wanting to figure everything out. Sometimes we follow guidance for the simple act of following guidance to learn to properly listen to the voice. And it's not what the ego attaches to it.
That's right.
I'm glad you said that.
I had to say it.
I know it.
Well,
the thing is, it's like usually whatever Spirit's telling you, if it's not aligned with principle,
yes,
you really need to take a good look at it and maybe
Correct.
Observe it a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Because whatever it is, it's going to have to be in alignment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and Eddie, I really appreciate you being with us. I can't believe we're already at basically the ending mark, and I want to wrap up with a couple things. And one is just really inviting all of our listeners with us to we all are trying to move into more spiritual consciousness. So as we begin our day, even at the end of the day, reviewing our day to think, what am I creating?
Mm-hmm.
As important as intention is, which we talked about in our last show, and this show, yes, we're thinking of intention, but we're also thinking of reflection, where after we've made a choice, what did we create today? And then how do we want to shift or change that tomorrow as we say yes to life? So in other words, it might mean different even more conscious choices.
Yes.
And then again, as we move forward, really listening to the intuition, which of course is our soul.
And always knowing that as we're living these conscious choices and decisions, that intuition and that voice and that spirit will start to speak more clearly and more loudly.
Yes.
It will. And then just trusting to follow that. And people say, well, how do you follow that? It comes just like you said before, Eddie, sometimes it comes with a feeling. I just had this intense feeling or goosebumps. Sometimes you might, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it might come through a person.
Yes. Right.
But you have to, I think it's always being in tune with their hearing. That's why I always pray for Spirit to open my ears that I would be able to hear.
Yeah. Any last words?
I've had the feeling that something just don't feel right here.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
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 Hey, Eddie, before we sign off, I want you to do a line or two of Yes to Life, will you? Just write out, just sing it. No, just Eddie Unplugged. Give us a phrase or two. We love that song.
Well, I'm saying yes.
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 Yes to life. I'm saying yes.
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 Yes to life. I'm saying yes.
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 Yes to life. I'm saying yes.
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 Yes to life.
Yes to life.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes to life.
Yeah.
Right here, right now.
Right here, right now.
All right, everybody. That was Eddie Watkins
Eddie
Jr.
Watkins, live and unplugged.
That's it. Joining us today for Yes to Life and the Authentic Spiritual Journey. Blessings, friends. We are glad you joined us. We'll be lifting you up in our prayers for all good things.
Love you, Eddie.
Infinite blessings, you guys. Love you too.
All right.
Take care now.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey presented by CCU Orlando and Aikens Counseling Center here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson and Paul Caswell, and Angela Martinez, as well as our partner patrons, CCU Orlando and Cassandra Akins. If you would like to help be a part of bringing shows like this and other programs to the channel, please consider becoming a patron. For patron information, episode show notes, and details about our other shows on the channel, head over to experienceofthesoul.com. And if you enjoyed this program, you can help spread the word by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or the podcast platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2018, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.